We'll go through with Otto updates, so what is new and what is coming, relevant news within the industry. I'm also going to then talk about the e-commerce framework that we have in our practice that we have and that we use with our clients and that we also share with practices using with Otto as well. And then we'll have time for a Q&A at the end. So, Stuart, if I hand over to you for updates.
Yeah, so when it comes to kind of the new things with Otto, a lot of it has been behind the scenes. We've been trying to put some things in place to improve the performance and also allow us to introduce some new features going forward. So yeah, when it comes to the portal, there have been a few improvements to make it a bit easier to monitor what Otto's been up to and provide feedback. So the first one is that now the member of staff who has provided the feedback is recorded, so you can just have a bit more visibility if you're part of a bigger team. If you need to check something there, you can see who's done it. Another thing is that we've restructured how the feedback works so that if Otto sees the same combination of a bank statement transaction and a bill multiple days, so this is commonly going to happen if there is a combination that Otto doesn't think should be reconciled. In the past, you would see this as a new piece of a new combination that you would need to give feedback on. Now we've made it so that if Otto sees the same bank statement transaction and the same bill, and you've given feedback on that, he will see that they're for the same thing, so that's going to save you having to provide as much feedback. And then the final thing that we've done, just a small tweak recently, is that you can now see whether it's a money in or money out transaction, which will hopefully make it a bit easier to kind of understand what that combination was about when you're giving feedback and just monitoring what Otto's been up to. The other thing that we've recently done with the portal is that we've moved it to Amazon Web Services. So that has had quite a big improvement on the performance. So hopefully you will have noticed that it's a bit more snappy now. Also means that it's much more robust than it was before, so it should be able to cope with sort of more severe interruptions without impacting anybody. And then what we're working on, so yeah, big piece of news here. So we've recently started looking into support for QuickBooks Online. So I should caveat this with, at the moment we're very much in kind of the research and sort of investigation phase of this. So at the moment, Otto can log into QuickBooks and he can navigate some of the important pages. But one of the things that we need to look through and really make sure is going to be robust is whether the information that we have in QuickBooks allows us to perform smart matches with the same accuracy that we can in Xero. So Otto was originally built to only support Xero. There's been some demand from practices to also support QuickBooks. So yeah, we really just need to make sure before we kind of launch this that we can provide the same accurate reconciliations that we have been in Xero so far. And I guess also to add to that is one of the big uses of Otto for Xero practices is with bank rules. But in QuickBooks, you can already set up bank rules to be automatically reconciled. So that wouldn't be something that would be very useful for practices using QuickBooks. So really the key part would all be around SmartMatch and matching those bills and invoices and bank transfers. So that's the bit that we really just need to make sure is going to be as reliable and robust as it is in Xero before we can start releasing that to current users. So yeah, that's what we're working on at the minute. And there's a few other bits and pieces that we'll try and kind of fit in around that big piece of work, but that's going to be our focus for this quarter at least.
Great, that's quite exciting. We've had quite a lot of requests for QuickBooks, haven't we? So
we have.
Okay, so on to industry news. So this is kind of just a section of what we think might be relevant to people who are either using with Otto or who are interested more generally in automating anything within their practice. So Briefcase recently announced that you can now show all line items. So Briefcase is a receipt capture tool along the same sort of lines as Apron, Dext, auto entry, and up to now line items were grouped by VAT code. Whereas, yeah, after a lot of feedback, they've now enabled a feature where you can show every single line item on an invoice, and that's quite useful. Um, Reconcile IQ is a new piece of software that, amongst other things, is can convert PDF bank statements to CSV. Now, this is only for certain banks at the moment, but it is currently free, and it's free up until January. This part is kind of like part of a bigger piece of work that they do. So their their core feature is being able to more easily spot issues between bank statements in the bookkeeping software. But yeah, this converting PDFs to CSV is a secondary feature that they have. Yes, it's really new. It's only been launched quite recently, and yeah, free until January. So I thought that was quite useful. Yeah, I often see in certainly Facebook groups there are often requests for software that converts bank statements to CSV. So I thought I'd put that in there. With QuickBooks, they have now launched a direct PayPal import using PayPal connector. This means that rather than having to manually create and upload spreadsheets with sales refunds, PayPal fees, that can now be directly imported into QuickBooks. And yeah, I guess that's pertinent for what we'll be talking about shortly with the e-commerce side of things. And then with Xero, this is currently being worked on, so it hasn't been launched just yet. The ability to be able to make bulk adjustments to inventory items. So I think that's going to be quite useful for if you have clients who want to track inventory in Xero, particularly for things like stock takes at month end, but the software that like their EPOS system or the software that they use doesn't integrate directly with the software with Xero to automatically update inventory. So we can now make bulk, or will soon be able to make bulk adjustments. So yeah, we're going to move on to kind of like the main learning piece of this webinar, and we're going to be talking about e-commerce and how we deal with it, both in our practice, the number nature, and how we advise practices using Otto to deal with e-commerce as well. And this is like we've come up with a framework, and this kind of come out of yeah our own learnings and experience with it, and also yeah talking to with Otto practices and hearing kind of how they're dealing with e-commerce, the problems that they have. So I'd say that there are kind of two problems really when dealing with e-commerce clients. One is you just get a single bulk payout from a payment service, and the other is that these businesses are often very high volume. So if we look at the first one, in both our practice and with Otto, we see a lot of businesses who are only recording sales when the payout is received from the payment service. So this might be your client is making payments via Stripe. Uh, Stripe takes that money, deducts the fee, then issues a payout to the main bank account. That payment is made up of lots and lots and lots of other sales, and that payment is also net of fees. So what this leads to is sometimes you have, particularly if businesses are doing it themselves, you have businesses underreporting sales because they're just using the payout figure as their sale amount. Or if they are not doing that, then there's quite a bit of work that needs to be done to get the gross sales amount. So we're needing to calculate the fees and then work out the total sales. So we're back calculating it, and that is time consuming and error prone, particularly as you often need to get multiple reports from the payment service. So Etsy is a particularly awful one for this, but if you're dealing with someone like Amazon, it's not just one fee per sale that you're looking at. You have lots of different kinds of fees to deal with as well.
Just a quick one on
Um,
that, Emma. I
yeah.
suppose there's also the problem of I think I hear from people that maybe they don't actually go and look at the source data, and perhaps they just kind of perform a single calculation on
Yeah.
the payout. So I guess you might be, yeah, like misrepresenting your VAT, or is that a potential issue if you've got
Yeah,
mixed
yeah,
products and mixed countries?
yeah, absolutely. I think if you're not getting or looking at, in some cases, if you're not looking at the source sale data, then yeah, there is a big risk there of underreporting sales, over-reporting sales, I guess, if you're just doing a base like what one base calculation. Yeah, VAT is coming into it, all of the different kind of fees. Yeah, there are lots of problems associated with just using kind of that one bulk payout. It also means that the client is not able to see the information that they might need to make decisions in Xero, and us as practices then also don't have that information to enable us to advise clients either. Um, and yeah, the other problem that we have is like this high volume, and so you might have the payment service set up as a bank account in Xero with or without a feed, and then the main problem there is high volume. So e-commerce transactions are often low value but high volume, and you also generally have lots and lots of transactions for exactly the same amounts. So yeah, we've kind of got two issues coming here. So in terms of solutions, so there are a few things that we can look at to try and make e-commerce work for us and work for our clients as well. So the first one is having a control account, or some people call it a dummy bank account. And that's something that we'd always recommend. So creating a bank account for each payment service that your client uses. So that might be Shopify, Stripe, PayPal, Amazon, Etsy, or all of those different services, even if there's not a full proper bank feed available. Ideally, it would do a direct import, direct integration. Stripe works really nicely for that. And that means that all sales can be entered into that bank account at the gross sale amount, so what the customer is paying. And then fees are also dealt with in that bank account as well. So what you then end up with is the net payout figure, which is then just a transfer to the main bank account, to the account that that money is eventually going to. The exact solution for that will really depend on the platform and the complexity. So at a basic level, you've got something like Stripe. Stripe integrates nicely with Xero. That integration pulls through gross sales and fees automatically. And then certainly how we deal with it in our practice is that those, both the sales and the fees, are then dealt with using bank rules in Xero, and then they're automatically reconciled by Otto. One of the good things about the Stripe integration is that it gives quite a bit of information in the bank feed. And so you can set up rules to do quite a few different things based on that information. So one is having sales recorded to different nominal codes. So we have clients that we do this for where they are selling different courses, for example. And so we have those going through to different nominals in Xero. So we can see at a glance which courses are bringing the most money. You can also deal with different VAT treatment, particularly if it's more simple. So Stripe will send through the country code of the customer's card. And so we have some rules set up where if if the country code is GB, then VAT is applied to that, and if the country code is not GB, then that is no VAT. And these our clients, these are like more simple ones, so they are all like B2B. If you have a mix of B2B and B2C, and so you've got different complicated VAT situations, then this may not be the best approach, but we find this works really well. for
I
a lot
guess
of
that
our,
also you need, yeah, if you've got a mixture of vatable and non-vatable products, I suppose as well. So
yeah,
yeah. So if you're fortunate enough to have clients that are B2B and only sell vatable or non-vatable items, or at least if you can isolate them by product, then this
yeah.
is a good approach, isn't it? But yeah, if you got more complex, then
Yeah, if it's a bit more complex, yes. If it's kind of it's either one thing or the other, then yeah, and it's easy to work out from the information Stripe sends through, then yes, we can do this with rules. Yeah, if it is a bit more complicated, then yeah, you might need a different approach. With bank rules, and particularly for this, for how we deal with our VAT treatment for these clients, you can kind of force a little bit of logic with Xero. So Xero applies bank rules in the order that they're in a list, and so it works from top to bottom. And it then applies the first rule that the transaction matches the criteria of. So yeah, if you're going to use the rules to look at the card country code, then yeah, we have ours so that GB is the first rule it sees, and then there's the same rule but without the GB criteria, and then that is effectively picking up all of the non-GB ones. Um, and yes, as I say, Stripe it is a fairly as I've been talking about it, I suppose it doesn't sound that simple, but Stripe is a fairly straightforward one. And yeah, our treatment for that is set of bank rules, and yeah, Otto then reconciles almost all of the transactions then. Um, you've then got more complicated cases. So this is particularly if the clients are using something like Shopify or Amazon. You are most likely going to want to use a third-party platform to bring that sales information into Xero, and that might be something like Commerce, Parex, A2X. These are all kind of third-party solutions that sit between whatever end platform you're using and Xero. And these mostly tend to create invoices. So they create sales invoices in Xero. That might be on a per transaction basis. If you're dealing with decent volume, then you're probably going to want that on no more regular than daily. For one of our clients, we have it set up weekly because their volume is relatively low on Amazon at the moment. But yeah, you're probably going to want no more than daily for the high volume ones. And so they say A2X rolls up the transactions, so all of the sales, all of the different fees into one transaction and one invoice in Xero. So then the like the net amount is then what is going to be paid out into the bank. And for reconciling that, that is then when you would use SmartMatch with Otto to deal with those. You may also, like certainly for us, we combine the A2X clients with still having a control account, a separate bank account in Xero. So again, while we're still being able to see all of the sales that are coming in, because of course with a lot of these payment services, there is a delay between them receiving the money from the customer and paying that money out. And so it's important that we have all of that information and we know exactly kind of like what money the client has, even if they can't physically touch it just yet. Um, Services like A2X Commerce, they can also deal with the more complicated transactions. So that might be refunds or it might be gift cards. Gift cards are often quite a bit of a nightmare if you're doing that manually. So the sale of them, but then customers actually using those to pay. Um, I will also briefly cover GoCardless because I know that was something that someone had mentioned when they registered, and they're not here, but they might watch the recording. So, although GoCardless, I would technically not class that as e-commerce, but it is a payment service that some people use, and yeah, we can certainly automate that a little more. So for GoCardless, an invoice must be created in Xero. That is what triggers the direct debit. And then when the customer pays that invoice, so when the direct debit is taken, then the invoice payment is, so the invoice is marked as paid, and the GoCardless fee is created in Xero automatically, and those two transactions are automatically reconciled in the GoCardless control bank account in Xero. The payout from GoCardless to the bank account, that is automatically created by Xero, but that isn't automatically reconciled. So that is something that needs to be manually reconciled, but that can be done using like the transfer between the two accounts can be done using a transfer bank rule and then reconciled in that way. So yeah, that's kind of like what I wanted to cover in terms of the commerce framework. Before I just go through reiterating the three steps of the framework, was there anything you wanted me to add, Stuart, that I haven't already?
I'm just going to ask. So we'd mentioned kind of like the more complex VAT treatment and things. So I guess
Mhm.
one of the things that A2X and the like would obviously do is be able to record the amount of VAT that was collected based on the product. But do they
Yeah.
also, I guess, would it be for A2X or the originating platform to record the VAT, I suppose? So yeah, thinking like, for example, we had a client who sold like crafting supplies, didn't she? And
Yeah.
so yeah, if you there were obviously some of those that had to be collected, some didn't, and then yeah, if you're selling to different places, I guess that all just works because the originating platform should be collecting the VAT when it needs to, and then A2X or Parex or whatever kind of takes that information, separates it all out so that you know which of those items VAT was collected on or not, and then you end up with your big block invoice in Xero that reflects everything. Is that kind of how that
Yeah.
works?
So in theory, that would come direct from kind of like the source platform, so Shopify, the Etsy, the website, whatever. Because that should be set up. Unfortunately, in that client's case, it wasn't set up properly, was it? But that
But I guess that's a
the
key thing to also be
and
aware of then, that
yeah, it
that
is that
maybe you need to kind of set up your e-commerce platform to follow all of the rules that your client needs to follow. Otherwise, you could inadvertently be getting it wrong straight away, and you'll never be able
yeah.
to fix it up.
Yeah, and yeah, that's actually a really good point. Of yeah, because it is that source platform that is then driving, as you said, that's then feeding the information to A2X or whatever you're using to then create the invoice to feed into Xero. The place to be going to check that initial information is the actual source. So yeah, it is. I think particularly if there are slightly complicated circumstances around, yeah, some things are vatable, some things aren't, some customers will be paying VAT, some won't be. I think if you have more complicated issues like that, then doing a check of the customer's website or wherever it is they're selling to make sure that the VAT treatment there is all set up correctly, because yes, it's that information from someone's Shopify website that then goes into A2X that is then creating the invoice that it needs to record all of those sales correctly, and then eventually going into Xero and being able to match up that invoice with the payout as well. So yeah, it's the yeah something like A2X or Parex. They're just taking the information. They're just receiving the information from the source website, and then creating that, putting it all into like a Xero friendly invoice or format,
And I guess it
I
doesn't
guess.
directly relate to what we're talking about here. But I suppose you kind of touched on um, that Xero were rolling out that batch inventory update feature. Kind of made me think also, I guess there's different ways to integrate if you're using inventory in Xero or you've got a separate system out of scope for this, but there's also ways to integrate those into your shop or whatever as well, aren't there, to make all that sync
Yeah,
so you don't have to update that individually.
yeah, A2X does that really nicely. Actually, I'm not. I assume the others do as well. Certainly Commerce will. But yeah, the A2X deals with the inventory quite nicely, and so yeah, it's receiving that information from the website. It's creating the invoice in Xero, but at the same time, it's also updating the inventory side of things. So if the invoices said that you've sold 10 widgets, then 10 is being deducted from the widget bit in the inventory
And
section.
again, sounds like you have to make sure everything's right, because if you don't kind of use the same product
Yeah.
codes or whatever it is, then that's not going to work and you're going to get in a mess.
Yeah, I think with a lot of these things, it is that there is often quite a bit of work at the beginning to set it all up. Certainly, Commerce and A2X have got very good support teams, systems, and who will help you set it all up and help go through it with you. I know, like, yeah, a few years ago, we got Commerce to help us with the gift card side of things for one of our clients, because yeah, that was just quite complicated, and so yeah, they helped us set all of that up. But yes, these, as it kind of sounds like from what I'm when I'm talking, these things can get very complicated very quickly. And these systems are very good at helping us make it less complicated, but there is still quite a bit of setup at the beginning to make sure that we're getting the information out that we need. So yeah, all of the VAT treatment correct, all of the if you're using separate nominals, all of that correct, different inventory, and also recording information about where the customer is based as well, if that is relevant for the VAT treatment.
And I guess we've touched on this a few times, but yeah, if the client's in charge of their own online store, you might find that you have to be a bit more involved than you would like in checking that they've set everything up correctly, just because of the impact that could have if they make a mistake. And yeah, so I remember there was a struggle, wasn't there, that it was not necessarily very obvious to the client what the correct VAT rate
Yeah.
was for their stuff. And so yeah, if they added products without us knowing and not checking, then we might only discover once we saw some sales coming in that we were then doing bookkeeping for, and that then has to get fixed. So I think that's
Yeah.
probably, outside of the kind of technical side of things, I think that's probably one of the potential issues, isn't it, of
Yeah.
kind of ending up with incorrect information. So yeah, maybe you need to be a bit more involved in the client's kind of setting up of this than you might prefer. It might save some time later on. Okay.
Yeah, and I guess just to kind of share a bit of that pain because it might be useful to someone. But this wasn't the whole issue, but one of the issues was that this particular client sold a book that they'd written, but they were also selling this book bundled in with other items as well, and so they'd ended up setting it all up so that nothing to do with the book was had VAT, and yeah, that then made it quite tricky. And yeah, we didn't, because that client had set everything up themselves. Yeah, we didn't spot that straight away. So now we when we take on e-commerce clients, we are checking that initial source information. Because yeah, if that's not set up correctly, then yeah, none of this is going to work correctly either. But yeah, I think if we can just go through, yeah, like the three steps that we've kind of spoken about. So yeah, it's creating what we call the control center. So that's going to be your control bank account. Yeah, whether that has a direct feed or not, and breaking down that bulk payment into either every single transaction, depending on volume, or daily transactions. And then it's how we deal with that volume. Yeah, if this is something like Stripe, then bank rules are going to be your friend with this. They really are. And I think, like, I quite like working with e-commerce clients, but the volume is high. And so, yeah, without being able to use Otto, then that would be an awful lot of very laborious reconciliation going on there. If if you're using something like A2X, then that's going to be SmartMatch from an Otto point of view to match against the invoice. And yeah, hopefully that has helped kind of demystify e-commerce a bit and giving you some things to think about for when you are either working with clients that you currently have or taking on e-commerce in the future. I think certainly when I've spoken to other practice owners, I think some people are a little bit concerned about taking on e-commerce clients, and it is that volume. It's the volume that puts them off. You can very quickly end up in the thousands with the transactions, like in a really short space of time. But I think if you've got a good system, so if you've worked through this framework and put these things in place, then they can actually be quite profitable clients, because if you can automate a lot of it, then then yeah, that's going to save you quite a bit of time and also ultimately end up with a really good end result for the client if everything is coming through correctly as well. So that's it on the e-commerce side. So if anyone has any questions, we can go through those now. This awkward bit where someone's trying to think of anything to ask.
Save our embarrassment. Or we can let you go and you can have
Yeah, so
a
we can
coffee
let you
for
go.
20 minutes and then pretend that you were still working.
I think we've covered everything for the questions for the people who registered but aren't here. Is that correct, Stu, or is there anything that I...
No, I think that
Okay.
was everything. Yeah, I think most people had signed up because they wanted to untangle their e-commerce problems. So yeah, I
Okay.
think that was all that.
Okay, so yeah, if no one's got any questions, then yeah, we'll let you go, give you back 25 minutes or so. Thank you for joining. Yeah, and hopefully see you at next month's webinar. Thank you very much.